One, two, check, check. Hello. Check one, two, two.
Now? Okay, it's audible now. Welcome to Hyperledger India chapter Hyperledger Hyderabad meetup. And we have Hyperledger Vice President Julian Gordon and Hyperledger C2 Hart is came down from Hong Kong and US to address the different initiative, what is happening at the Hyperledger Foundation. And so they started the GFF and then Bangalore and then Pune. Now we are in Hyderabad. Next we are going Chennai and then Delhi. So we going multiple places to talk to community, talk to the people who are builder on the Hyperledger technologies. So today's event is sponsored by NPCI. So thanks to NPCI for this. So everyone welcome. And in Hyperledger is an open source community, diverse communities, everyone is welcome. And anybody can build and use the Hyperledger technologies without any kind of licensing fees. It's completely open and even open governance too. So today's guest, Hart, is Hyperledger and Julian is Hyperledger's vice president. So, and today from Hyperledger chapter, myself Kamlesh and I have Kartike is another lead who take care of our event initiatives. So he's from KPMG. And the open source is open development, completely open governance, everything like you can see join the Discord meetings or Zoom meetings, and you can even see the how the code development is happening. Everything is completely open. It's nothing like the agenda. Even you can be part of the decision making. That what projects, what feature you need in a Hyperledger. So this is our team. So when this is started 2017, we have only two people like Ajay and Anmol from Intel to started this initiative. But later we uh, expanded ourselves and we added like uh, Vikram, who is a SCL Tech person, and Deepika is from Walmart. And to take the different initiative, we created different initiative in the Hyperledger. We have Karthik and Deepu who take care of our different engagements initiatives. Let's say planning different meetups and different events. Let's say hackathon. Let's say a student chapter connectivity. Then we have two people who take care directly work with the students in engineering college and universities. So we have currently, I think, couple of different student chapter societies in Chennai, in Bangalore, in Chandigarh, where we are working with students and faculties to maybe create the awareness and education from the college itself. And because in India we have many different open source contributor to Hyperledger projects. So let's say Web3, let's say Sasa Tooth, like Fabric, like Cactus. So we created one community, the developer who are the contributor to Fabric and contributor to the Hyperledger projects. And we encourage people, developers especially, to come together and be contributor and maintainer to the Hyperledger project. So, for example, recently we went to the Explorer by the ecosystem. Vector tool is contributor from India. There's a Web3.js contributor from Pune itself. So there are multiple developers, and we encouraging people to come together and be maintainer and contributor. And if you want to know about the Hyperledger India chapter, so there is a ebook we released last year. The new version is also coming this year, where we gathered all the information about different startup, different Hyperledger vendors, Hyperledger initiative, and the projects being used in India. So you can download from here. And so we have today's agenda, a couple of sessions and a panel discussion. So I will hand over to Ankita. She will take care from here. Yeah, thank you.
So very good evening to one and all present here. I'm Ankita, and on behalf of NPCI, I would like to extend thanks for everyone. We've taken our time on a Monday evening to be here and listen to all our esteemed guests. So without further ado, let me just dive deep into today's agenda. So I'm sure most of us here know about the Hyperledger Fabric, the Hyperledger suite of products and today, first of all, the thing that we have on our agenda is something called the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. So it is essentially the flagship organization of the Linux Foundation, which is working towards fostering innovation and collaboration in the development and deployment of decentralized systems in tech. So for the same, can we please have on stage Mr. Hart Montgomery, who is the CTO of the Hyperledger, and also Mr. Julian Gordon. And they will be talking about all the Hyperledger projects and the labs and all the development which has been done specific to the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. So can we please have a huge round of applause?
How do I work this now? I need to move the slides forward. And thank you NPCI, thank you everybody for hosting this today. What a great venue, right? Okay. And I hear it's raining. I hear that's unusual, right? So I think we arrived on the right day. I think we were told before there was really bad rains before us. So what we're going to do is today, there's two of us, there's Hart and myself, and we're going to, as it says, deep dive into the projects and talk a little bit about the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. So my job really is to warm up the real act, which is Hart, who's going to follow me, who's our CTO, and he's going to go through, and Hart has not been with us here in India, and particularly Hyderabad, since he's been with Hyperledger. So we dragged him all the way from San Francisco, very excitedly, to come here today. So I'll firstly cover ask a first question. Who knows what Hyperledger is? Put your hand up if you know what Hyperledger is. Yes, you all know, right? Does anyone know what Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust is? All right. Hart does. So that's my job today, is to tell you what that is, right? So there you have. So we have this new project that's going to be called the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. It's launching in about 15, 16 days. And what it is Hyperledger reinvented or supersized. It's our new umbrella project, which is going to incorporate Hyperledger. So why are we doing this? We're doing this because we have The last year, Art was generally much responsible for bringing new projects in. We're having so many people coming to request to put new projects, new products, new contributions, new communities to come in to Hyperledger. So we have made a decision, or our board, our community has made a decision to make this new, broader foundation called Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. And we're launching on the 16th of September, so we are 15 days away. So why? What are the technologies? Well, predominantly, Hyperledger, when it was set up in 2015, 2016, way back at the part, we were there at that time, right? It was just about ledgers. It was quite a simple world. But we've now increased, in some blockchains, distributed ledgers. We've had whole cryptography projects. Not everything is about a ledger. We have decentralized file storage, centralized identity systems. It's not just about ledger. As you know, decentralized identity has become, is becoming a very, very significant area. And Hart was just saying, that decentralized identity and security are going to be so key in our digital infrastructure of the future. And what we do here and the programs that we work on and develop are going to be very significant, I think, moving forward. Zero knowledge proofs, multi-party computation, federated systems. Does anyone know the federated systems here? Well, it's Hart's going to tell us. It's all around ML and basically providing multi-models going into machine learning, but still keeping the privacy of where the original data came from and what the original data was. So why are we doing this? So it's just the impact of decentralized, the impact is just growing and growing and growing, right? And particularly in asset tokenization, which has taken off in I think the last year, it's just really taking off, especially with central banks around the world. We're seeing, we were just, has anyone heard of the Finternet? So the Finternet was something that was brought up here in India. We have so many projects globally talking about the use of tokenization. So I'm going to go through this quickly, but in order to do that, you need to modernize the core infrastructure of multiple industries, the financial services, healthcare. We're seeing this across many different industries. And BCG said it's going to be a $16 trillion by 2030. So you're going to see this slide a few times. I noticed, Kamlesh, you shared this slide today, right? So open source is important. Any application today, 80% of its code will be open source. And that becomes an opportunity, but it's just a fact, right? But open source in itself, like writing some code, throwing it into GitHub, it can just go to GitHub to die. You have to make it a lively community. You have to make a large ecosystem around any project to make it successful. And so for that, you need open development. Hey, open development. You need, so people working out in the open and development, and that's under Hart, within the community within Hart. That's the area that helps the open development. So all of you here. So when we talk about Hyperledger technologies, it's not Hyperledger technologies, it's the community's technology. It's you, it's everyone out there. And also open governance. So governance is out in the open. There's no secrets. There's no, it's out there in the open for everyone to see. And that is why Linux Foundation projects are successful. That's the secret sauce, being open, not just in terms of software, but in terms of community and being truly neutral. The LF Decentralized Trust will be very much like Hyperledger, but bigger and better. We'll have more communities, we'll have more code bases, we'll have a bigger umbrella. And the mantra that we always use, all of us are smarter than any one of us. So the more all of us, the smarter that we can be. The more we can break down silos, so you don't have to go between foundations. So they'll all be under the same umbrella. So very exciting. And there are many new projects. And so on the 16th, you'll see some quite interesting new projects, things I think will surprise a few people that have come under this new umbrella. We have a growing landscape. So you can go and see Hyperledger landscape in 16 days. It will be the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust landscape. So we're just seeing that grow. So we want to break down the barriers to people coming into that landscape. Why do we focus on, why the projects focus on decentralized trust? One is just for market opportunities. It's a home for new technologies and increased flexibility. And really, at the bottom one, we'll have a comprehensive community engagement. And just to make it clear, because people get slightly confused, when this new organization happens, its executive director will still be Daniela Bossa. The CTO of Hyperledger will become the CTO of the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. The VP for Asia Pacific and Middle East, me, it would be that for LFDT. The India chapter will not be the Hyperledger India chapter, it will be the LFDT, Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust chapter. So everything is now going to become Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. And why, I'm not going to go into detail, why an umbrella structure? Because that's how we all work. The bigger the tent, the better it is, right? So we'll have enhanced marketing. We'll have now a higher technical advisory committee. We'll oversee even a larger area and see those opportunities of connecting dots between projects. We'll have more branding. And I think branding is important. And why? Why Linux Foundation? So Linux Foundation, as you know, is incredibly successful. We have Linux, 80% of the world's compute. We have Kubernetes. We have multiple different projects. And the way it's successful is because it is a truly neutral place. So it's a bit of a coup for Hyperledger to become the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust, because now we have the Linux Foundation, the ultimate neutral place. So when people are coming to Hyperledger, they think, oh, maybe we have to be enterprise, we have to be this, we have to be that. But with this, it's a far broader community that we can bring in. And it's been done for other projects. LF Networking, we used to have a bunch of different telco projects. Now they're being brought together, which makes it better for that community. And for members, they can only have joined one project. AI, we've done the same thing, energy. So we're looking for that continuum, Linux Foundation, the success and the vibrancy and really the neutrality. Everybody in the world can use our technology, and everyone in the world is part of our community. So we will have underneath it every project. Some projects will still be Hyperledger projects, but they can call themselves ABC project. They'll be through that, do more branding underneath the LFDT. So people want to keep their brand, they can do that. So we're creating a bigger umbrella. That was a barrier for some people to enter. So the branding is strong. So Hyperledger is still a very strong brand, great recognition. Everyone knows what Hyperledger stands for. So we think, we're pretty sure, like Hyperledger Fabric. If I say Hyperledger to most people, they think Fabric then. So I think they'll keep their name, right? Hyperledger Cactus, another great interoperability project, and many of the others will retain the names. Others, which may be less kind of DLT-based, may use another name or maybe have a separate name. By the way, does anyone know Hyperledger Cacti? It's an interoperability project. Well, Hart was the one who wrote the original paper for it. So he could tell you a little bit about that as well. That's one of our fastest growing projects. Yes, we'll have technical governance, which we have today, so that will continue. We have standards. So we work a lot on standards. We have processes to do that. There's always a debate whether standards become before software or software becomes standards, right? So, sometimes, let's say you have 15 standards bodies, then you need a 16 standards body to look after the 15 standards bodies. So we have standards well understood in how we do them and the flexibility that we can work with them. So that's it, really. I really just wanted to make sure that you're all aware that this is happening, that Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust, 16th of September. Watch the press. We're going to be making lots of big announcements, and we want more and more people to join our community and get stronger for it. Our members, I'm going to talk a little bit, our members are at center stage. So anyone who is a member today will become a founding member. So any company here that is a member who wants to become a member, you will be a founding member of the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. And then we can do that once. So it's a great opportunity to do that. We have lots of new members, and we'll be talking about that on the 16th. And we have lots of good members, and we're building up So that's just the beginning. We're then going to be doing a build-up with our community. There's going to be lots of activities building up to the 23rd and 24th of October when our members get together in the Mint, the place they print money in used to print money in San Francisco. Now they do digital stuff. So we'll be meeting there. And we'll also be having a maintainers meeting. I think it's on the 21st and 22nd. So for those maintainers, they can come to that. And I really couldn't be in India without mentioning the Indian community. So Infosys, Wipro, Z, IDS, KBA, St. Kitts, and I think two really significant kind of technology. NPCI, who are hosting it today, and thank you, we were just there today. You know, NPCI do some amazing things, and it's such a great thing to have them as part of our community, you know, for them to really, I mean, as I said, the smarter and more people we have, and I think NPCI are definitely in that rank. It's great to have them here, and the whole Indian stack, some of the amazing things they've done here. It's great to have them. And DigiYatra, for those who flew in today, they probably used DigiYatra. And if you don't know, that runs on Hyperledger Aries and Indy. So that's some of the technology. We're running communities. I have to say thank you to Kamlesh and everyone here, right? In terms of the community, right? And I think you went through everyone from the community, right? We've got momentum. This may be the last time you see this slide because the number of projects will just go up, won't it? So we're just about to supersize this, and our projects is going to get bigger and bigger. We have a diverse ecosystem, so our special interest groups will continue to grow. And I think that's where I'm going to end. And I'm going to let Hart talk about where we started. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Julian. Thanks everybody for coming today. I want to emphasize that I want this to be as informal as possible. So if you have a question, please don't hesitate to raise your hand and ask. I'm going to be going over a little bit more of the project and technical content. So let's get started. So Hyperledger is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, enterprise blockchain communities. Since 2015, we've been really building and shaping the enterprise blockchain community space. And I like to mention this because I like to talk about all our projects and technologies in the context of how we got there, how we evolved, and the overall timeline. You can see, all of the projects, starting back from Fabric in 2015. Do we have anybody here who used like Fabric 0.6? Kamlesh, yeah. But the community has really evolved. And I'll talk about that today. So let's get started. We like to think of our projects as falling into three categories: ledgers, libraries, and tools. A ledger is obviously Fabric. Library might be something like Aries or Web3j. And we have lots of tools like Cacti. Maybe people have used Caliper for performance testing, or Bevel. I know we have some Indian Bevel maintainers. So awesome. So Fabric. Fabric was the first project really in Hyperledger, and it's still very popular, right? As this survey showed, it was preferred by enterprises, by the majority of enterprises for blockchain solutions. This data is a little bit old, but we didn't have the data for the survey last year. We would expect it would be fairly similar. And who here is familiar with the Fabric 3.0 release? Buddy, the upcoming Fabric release coming up? Some folks? Should come in the next couple of months. It has a lot of exciting features. One of the features that I'm most excited about personally is the modular consensus API, which will allow you to run a number of different new consensus algorithms easily. I think some of the hot stuff-based consensus algorithms, if people are familiar with those, which are based on threshold cryptography, are exciting, as well as some of the graph-based consensus algorithms. Some applications. One of the most popular applications for Fabric has and is supply chain and trade finance. I'm not going to go through all of these case studies in full detail, but I provide a link to our case study library at the end. So if there's any application you want to go into in more detail, I definitely encourage you to check out our case studies. We have much more information on all of these online. But the GSBN, the Global Shipping Business Network, is one of the most successful trade finance blockchains. Something like a third of all containers that go over an ocean get that on the GSBN, which is kind of a method. TradeWaltz is another example of a trade finance platform, and that one is done by NTT. And there are more supply chain use cases as well, right? So Circular has a very nice supply chain case based on electric vehicle battery tracking. So the idea is Circular can use the blockchain to show you that your EV battery has been produced in a sustainable and not environmentally damaging way. Fujitsu did a water tracking project, ironically, on blockchain, showing that water was applied correctly and that some companies, or excuse me, some countries it doesn't rain as much as India, and that is, tracked very carefully. Digital currencies. So, as many of you know, we have seen a lot of fabric use cases around digital currencies, right? Everybody knows the e-rupee, but we've seen a huge amount of CBDC interest and really digital token interest for blockchain recently. We have a whole ebook on this. It's something like 30 pages, and it covers a lot of different things. So if this is something you're interested in, definitely check it out online. And this is always a fun slide. So this is a map showing where countries are doing CBDCs, what they're doing, and what Hyperledger technology they're using. So as you can see, there are a lot of different countries that are exploring some concept of, some phase of CBDC production with Hyperledger technology. And Fabric and Besu are probably the most popular, but there are also some Iroha CBDCs, and there's some other deployments that use things like Fabric and Cacti for extra functionality. But again, check out the CBDC tracker, which is done through the Bank of Innovation Settlements, as well as our ebook on CBDCs, which you can easily find online. So before we go a little further, I want to briefly talk about kinds of different blockchains. Are people familiar with the notation of public and private and permissioned and non-permissioned for blockchain? Okay, that's great. And I have a couple of examples here. Permission versus permissionless is obviously who can write to a blockchain, and public versus private is who can read from a blockchain. And I'm mentioning this because I'm going to start talking about Besu and our connection to the Ethereum ecosystem. So who here remembers Hyperledger Burrow? Anybody? Awesome. So this was really a project that was way before its time. They had EVM integration for a number of different chains. It was a very, very cool concept. That is probably about 2 years early, and I guess that kind of thing happens sometimes with technology. But as you can see, we have a long history of working with Ethereum and various different capacities, from the EEA and the EF joining to obviously Besu being contributed, and essentially all of our later projects support Ethereum in some way. So what is Besu? So how many people are familiar with Besu? Some people? It's an open source Ethereum execution client written in Java. And the really nice thing about Besu is it runs on public Ethereum, but it can also be run in private Besu deployments. So if you use Besu, you don't have to pick whether you want to use private blockchain or public blockchain or permissioned or non-permissioned. You can sort of do it out. And that flexibility is very appealing to a lot of people, particularly those in the finance industry. So for tokenization, Besu is right now the preferred blockchain platform by a number of different financial firms. We see it as being very popular, particularly in the US and Europe. But Besu also is used to run mainnet Ethereum, right? So something like 15% of all Ethereum mainnet nodes run Hyperledger Besu. For those of you that are familiar with public Ethereum, the Ethereum Foundation wants to have a diverse set of Ethereum clients so that if there's a bug in one client or something, the whole network doesn't go down. And Besu is a core part of their strategy here. And it turns out, if you actually contribute to Besu, you can potentially get money from the Ethereum Foundation for doing that. So I'm not going to go through this whole slide here, but this slide really shows the optionality of Besu and why people choose to use Besu. That we have everything from Ethereum mainnet, which I've talked about, to L2 networks. If you're familiar with L2s, Linea runs on Besu, and we're expecting to see more L2s on Besu in the future. We have a number of hybrid and interoperable systems that use Besu. So the Asian Development Bank cross-border security system uses Besu in a very interoperable way. It's definitely an interesting case study that I'd encourage you to check out. And then we have things like public permissions networks, right? So these are networks where anyone can read, like government networks, but maybe only certain government parties can dictate consensus. So LACchain is a great example of this. Has anyone seen LACchain before? Latin America blockchain. So different part of the world, but a really interesting experiment that it's not an experiment, it's a production blockchain. A lot of cool applications going on it. So sorry for that, that was not the right word choice. But I definitely encourage you all to look at that, particularly if you're interested in government projects. And then finally, of course, we have a lot of private permissioned Besu networks. Things around supply chain, finance, really every topic you can think of. So some more applications and case studies. I'll talk about Besu stuff this time. So Finality. Finality is a distributed financial market infrastructure with a huge number of different institutions as stakeholders. You can read them up there. And the goal is to reduce systemic and credit risk by using this decentralized infrastructure. One core feature of this is faster settlement. So this is a really nice financial systems blockchain. And I'd encourage you to check out the case study if you're interested. Another great example is the city token services. This helps city streamline their financial operations and reduce transaction times and settlement times. So this is something that potentially, it does save them substantially in terms of back office resources and timings. A big feature is, again, the much faster transaction processing times compared to what they were doing before. And if you're interested in banking applications, this is another really awesome case study to check out. So UDPN, this got a lot of attention at the WEF at Davos, but this is a DLT underpinned messaging protocol for financial services. It lets organizations try use cases in a controlled blockchain environment, and it helps organizations access digital currencies through sort of a single interface. And finally, one near and dear to Julian's heart is Project Genesis. And this is tokenized green bonds. So I presented a couple of projects that were focused on green activities earlier, and this is another one. This combines sort of carbon credits and finance in a really interesting way. And so if you're interested in finance and in green technology, this is a really interesting case study to check out. So I mentioned, public permission networks earlier, like LACchain, Alastria, and EBSI. I think we're going to see more of these in the future. I know a lot of folks here have talked about Finternet, which I think would be another great example. And if you're interested in all of these financial use cases on Besu, we do have a big working group on this with a lot of very active banks and credit card companies. broader finance. So again, everything here is completely open to join. It's all free. So I definitely encourage you to come to, meetings, join groups. It's really easy. So we talked about a number of different blockchains, lots of separate chains, lots of separate deployments. And as Hyperledger evolved, you could sort of see that we needed interoperability, right? Our view is that there will be no one blockchain to rule them all, right? There will be different blockchains for different purposes, and they will need to interoperate. So this is where Cacti comes into play, and this is why we created Cacti. So Cacti is a blockchain integration tool that allows for secure integration between different blockchains. So you can do things like information transfer, atomic swaps, bridging. All of this is the goal of Cacti. It has a really nice architecture around this that I could spend quite a bit of time talking about, but we don't have time today. But I do want to emphasize that Cacti is really an SDK of SDKs, not a blockchain of blockchains. So it's not like these network of networks protocols you see. You can sort of take Cacti as a toolbox and use it to spin up your own interoperability solutions relatively efficiently. So one example of this was this Asian Development Bank prototype for cross-border securities transactions. There were a number of different blockchains used. Besu, Aroha, and Corda were all used. And Cacti was used as the interoperability solution to make sure everything's done. So we now have interoperability, right? And now the problem becomes, how do we keep track of everyone across this decentralized ecosystem, right? And well, the way we do that is decentralized identity. Are people here familiar with decentralized identity? Some people? Awesome. A good number of people, right? So if you're familiar with decentralized identity, right, it's usually a protocol where we have an issuer, a holder, and a verifier. And Hyperledger, usually Indy is our distributed ledger, which is sort of a root of trust, right, where we keep public keys and revocation information and stuff like that. And then Aries is the agent layer, which allows us to, manage and verify credentials. One of my favorite use cases in all of Hyperledger is the British Columbia digital identity solution. So they have a full digital wallet that allows you to store, present, use digital credentials however you like. It uses the full Aries stack, so it allows for zero-knowledge proofs about credentials. It's a really cool system, and you can actually go download this wallet yourself if you want to see it, although the British Columbia government will not issue you credentials. I tried, yeah. They wouldn't give me a credential, so, oh well. What about KYC is another really interesting application of decentralized identity that this Instant did. The idea being that you can essentially use Aries and zero-knowledge proofs to allow for reusable KYC. It's a really cool solution. In a similar way, Indicia, which is a Colorado-based startup in the US, has a lot of cool digital identity solutions. One of them is around proven finance, so essentially allowing organizations to verify their employees and employees to verify themselves to their organizations to reduce fraud and good behavior. Oops, what happened there? Yes, Binode. So everybody covering those digital assets here. So I don't want to explain it too much, but this is another really cool thing based on Indy and Aries. So I've gone over a lot of technology, and you might think that this is a ton of stuff. How can I possibly, integrate and all this? And that's really where Firefly came in, why it was built, and then use it. So Firefly is this a super node embedded for Web3 apps. And the idea is Firefly is sort of a middleware layer that you can write code once for Firefly, and you can run it on all the blockchains that they support. And it's quite a lot more than that. but it makes the development very easy. So the idea is sort of, if you want to build a standard blockchain application, generally you have to do a lot of things. And a lot of these things are just sort of blockchain plumbing. They're not really specific to your application, but you just have to do that. You know, things like handling events, handling identity, messaging. It's not really specific to one particular application. So the idea is Firefly has a system that handles this all for you, and also connections to all the different blockchains. And the only thing you have to do is focus on building, you know, your specific application. And the idea is that this can dramatically reduce the time you need to build an application while providing, you know, while essentially being minimal overhead in terms of performance. And one really nice application that uses this is the Swift CBDC sandbox, where Firefly was used on top of a number of different backends to make development much simpler and easier. And finally, one of the most recent projects, Hyperledger Web3j. It's the Java integration library for Ethereum, and it makes building enterprise applications on EVM-specific blockchains much simpler. And so, yeah, if there's the timeline, you can, you know, kind of see the whole history again, how we evolved. We went from Fabric and ledgers to, you know, Ethereum to interoperability to identity to integration and onward. We always get a lot of questions about what project should I use for what particular application. So we have a project which is online that explains all our different projects. You know, I only really talked about 4 today, but you know, we have 15 projects in close to 100 labs. Many of them are used by a lot of people. So I'd encourage you to check that out. This project matrix, you know, has information you need to get started about which project should you use. Yes, our goal is to drive enterprise adoption, and to do this, as I've alluded before, we have this use case tracker. There are tons of use cases in it at this point. Chances are, if you're thinking of using blockchain for an application, someone has done something relatively similar to what you want to do, and I'd highly recommend use cases. Tons of them at this point, including some bad folks in the audience. We also have a DLT landscape that lets you see where our technology fits in the broader ecosystem. If you want to compare and contrast and see what's compatible with what, this is a great place to look. The more numbers, I know Julian presented some of the more business numbers, but I like to show the technical numbers as well. So you can see we have a lot of contributors, a lot of commits, a huge amount of development. And how many people are on our Discord? Is that Discord? Awesome. So our community has really shifted away from email to Discord for communication. Some of the older folks don't like that very much, but you know, the maintainers and the contributors get to decide. So if you haven't joined our Discord, definitely join our Discord. So why should people get involved? I like to talk about this a little bit. You know, maybe you want to get involved and you need to persuade someone in the organization why you should be allowed to contribute and be open. But working to open can often decrease time to market and accelerate the work of your project. We see a lot of people that have some problems with code bases that they have to spend considerably more time working around than if they just directly would and fix something in the code base that was causing them a problem to begin with. For developers, you know, at least in the US, one of the first questions you get asked if you're looking for a job is, show me your GitHub. And if you're doing a lot of work on your open, you have a great resume that you can show people and say, look at all this stuff I did. And we find people have terrific success with that. From a company perspective, it's important to make sure that a project you're building a product on is healthy and stays active. So that's another good reason to contribute. We think open source is actually a great way to drive adoption of products. You know, no one wants to be better than consumers and software purchasers of all kinds are very aware of the potential pitfalls of vendor lock-in. Having an open core is a great way to convince a customer that they're not going to have terrible issues with vendor lock-in. There's also a worldwide group of people, including yourselves, but really all around the globe. You have contributors, maintainers, and users. And again, the final point is related to open source being a due accuracy, as I believe Julian said. Those who do and do things get to decide the direction of the projects. And so that's it. We have a number of links. Please come join us, and thanks. And at this point, I'll answer any questions. So thank you for your time. Questions? Someone has to have a question. If people are being shy, I'll be around. Please feel free to ask me at a later time. And thank you again.
A big thank you to both Julian and Hart for giving us a deep insight into the projects by the Hyperledger Foundation. And needless to say that we are really looking forward to 16th of September and seeing what the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust has for us. So while we had spoken about a lot of different use cases that are being solved by Hyperledger, there's one specific use case that we would be talking about further, and that is the central bank digital currencies. So for the same, I would like to call upon stage Mr. Rajesh Tudu, who is the partner of emerging tech at PwC. So he will be talking about how CBDCs are essentially going to help us in fronting the payments innovation, and also about how it will help us in financial inclusion. So can you please have a round of applause for Mr. Rajesh?
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I get into the session, I wanted to check a couple of things with the audience here. How many of you experienced demonetization in the country? All of you, right? All of you have experienced demonetization in the country. How many of you use unified payment interface on a daily basis? How many of you use it more than 100 times in a day? Wonderful. There are people who use more than 100 times in a day. How many of you have a live CBDC wallet in your phone? Many of you have a live CBDC wallet in your phone, right? But we have not seen many significant use cases coming out of it. It has been around for quite some time, but now is the time to look at in terms of how to use CBDC to push the frontiers of payment transformation in India, as well as the financial inclusion. Why this becomes important is some of us have been at Global FinTech Festival that has happened last week. Julian was there, Kamlesh was there, I was there, and we could see the perceptible change in the atmosphere. My journey in payments industry has been in the year 2014. And in 2014, I had promoted a fintech payment processing company, which became a member of Visa and MasterCard. And when I used to go to a lot of bankers, and when I used to ask for the guidance, they used to tell two things to me. One is they used to say, have you witnessed China Union Pay? Number one. And number two, they used to say, okay, if you have not witnessed China Union Pay, come back and tell me about cryptocurrency. So there were only two things on the mind of those senior leaders in the financial services in India. Today, nobody gives reference of China Union Pay for payments transformation, right? Today, everybody gives reference of Unified Payment Interface, National Payments Corporation of India, and what they have done in the payment space. Now is the time to look at from a CBDC perspective. Why CBDC becomes important? Can anybody guess how many unbanked people are there in this country? Any guesses from the audience? How many unbanked people are there in this country? The number is at 200 million. 200 million people, even today, do not have access to a bank account. Now, all of you have raised your hands from a UPI perspective. What does it mean to engage with a UPI? What is required to engage with a UPI? A bank account, right? That's a minimum prerequisite to engage with a UPI. Now look at 200 million people who do not have a bank account. How can they engage with unified payment interface? Not possible. That's where the concept of central bank digital currency comes into the picture. And that's where, the central bank is looking at pushing the frontiers of this particular adoption. So in terms of what does CBDC do, there are a number of things that CBDC does. I would like to distinguish it into two categories. The first category is for people who do not have a bank account. Right? Theoretically, the central bank can open accounts with those people directly, and which will give them an opportunity to engage directly with the central bank. Of course, I don't think that model is being considered in India. Maybe the folks from NPCI here can clarify, but technically that model is possible. So one aspect is to look at in terms of how do we bring these people who do not have access to a bank account into the mainstream economy and then give them the luxury of banking service. That's one aspect. The second aspect is the set of people who already have a bank account and who are beneficiaries of what we call as direct benefit transfer, DBT, right? And DBT in this country has been enabled by a trinity of three things. One is Jandan, the second one is Aadhaar, and the third one is mobile. So it is going to facilitate direct transfer of money into the account of a beneficiary. With that, does it accomplish the end objective? No, it does not accomplish the end objective. There are a number of things to be addressed. I'm a farmer, or rather there is a farmer, and the farmer is receiving beneficiary amount from the government, let's say for farm subsidy, which means the farm subsidy has to be used for procurement of fertilizers or for farming purposes. That money cannot go and end up in a liquor shop. Today there is no method to ensure that money which comes as a direct benefit transfer into a farmer's account cannot be taken out and it can be spent for needs or for purposes different compared to what it has been set up for initially. That's where the programmability of the money comes into picture, which is what we call as the programmable currency. And that programmable currency will give you a last mile, track and trace, last mile transparency, last mile auditability perspective. So you see from a CBDC perspective, there are two set of diverse needs that can be accomplished in this country. One, get unbanked people into the stream of banking. And second, bring in the element of programmability. And there are a number of use cases. These days, the millennials are notorious. They don't want cards from their parents. They want only cash because they don't want to leave the trail behind as to where they're spending that particular cash. So it's an unaddressed need. And there again, a CBDC or a programmable money is able to address that need in a significant fashion. And of course, there are many other benefits. It simplifies settlement. It enables ease of distribution of money, reduces the cost of distribution of money. It's electronic. You can print it or you can create it and then start distributing it immediately. It also gives people an ability to see the money, right? Today, the money that is kept in other electronic channels, whether it is Paytm, Google Pay, or whatever it is, you're not able to see the money except for the number. There is no digital twin of the currency in the wallet. And there is a particular segment of people who would like to see the digital twin of the currency in a wallet. And for that particular segment, the central bank digital currency plays an important role. And it also, we've seen what has happened in this nation when you brought more and more people into the ambit of payments, right? The amount of transformation that has happened at the grassroots level with UPI, with various other payment methods. Maybe it's a Beam or UPI or whatever is the payment method. There's a significant contribution to the spur of the economy. It spurred the economy to a certain extent or to a large extent. And that is what the government is trying to do with the introduction of CBDCs. So what are the use cases? I did mention to you about programmable money. I did mention to you about bringing people who are underbanked into the banking environment or into the nature of banking. It's not just that. There are also other areas where it has got a significant applicability. As you know, government has enabled settlement, international payment settlement in rupee denomination. We are settling that with some countries in the Middle East. As we go along, we will end up settling that with more and more countries when they come onto the bandwagon of settlement with the rupee. When that happens, CBDC again has an important role to play, where you could use this particular instrument as a method of settlement. So, in terms of what is it going to do? Maybe I should use some flexibility. Yeah. So what it is going to do, it's obviously going to reduce the time for transfers. There is a business case that we have looked at where it's not only make the payments swifter and faster, but it is also going to contribute to a cost saving of 3 to 5%. And it is generally said that when you look at CBDC for cross-border payments, there's amount of data that is available, where it is going to bring in new lines of revenue through new service offerings for the financial institutions. And it's also going to contribute to a significant reduction in the cost. And the study says that that reduction is not just few percentage points, it's about 15 to 20%. And it is also, those who come in this scheme of things as an intermediary, it is going to generate income for them through the fees that will be levied for handling these central bank digital currencies. We've also put out a view in terms of how you could look at CBDC as a universal token for cross-border payments, which is what I was saying in the beginning. As more and more trade, international trade, gets settled between different countries using rupee as a denominator, CBDC plays an important role over there. And are we the only people who are thinking about this? Not really. There have been many successful implementations. There's a project called Project Bridge, where few countries participated in that. Countries in Far East like Hong Kong, Thailand, countries in the Gulf region, or in the Middle East region, which is Saudi Arabia, and again China from a Far East perspective. They engaged in this initiative facilitated by BIS. Primarily, the aim was to enable instant cross-border payments between the participating countries. And then now there is an MVP, minimum viable product, that is ready. Now they want to scale it up on a large-scale basis. Similarly, there's Project ABA, again, between participating banks in Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and some more banks in that particular region. They looked at sharing a digital certificate, primarily from a cross-border payment perspective. Similarly, Swift CBDC at PwC, we've been involved with Swift directly, and we've done a number of use cases using Swift, primarily to demonstrate the business value and also the change in the operations and performance using CBDC. It has been used for forex payments, it has been used in trade finance and various other trade payments. So when you look at the use case of a retail CBDC, which I was talking to you about, the programmable money, the number of use cases where programmable money needs to be implemented. For example, you also look at some of the identity documents like Aadhaar and the others. When Aadhaar is able to validate the proof of identity, it's not going to bring the proof of presence. So how do you take the Aadhaar document of a beneficiary and give it to a bank and it gets validated and the amount gets transferred? How do you know that actually that beneficiary is there? So there's no proof of presence per se in the existing scheme of things, which is an opportunity for improvement. And obviously, the regulators are looking into those aspects. Once you address that, along with an added participation of CBDC bringing in the programmability, it is going to address a lot of sticky problems in the country and also for many people outside the country in their respective countries when you look at specific implementations. So what did we see in terms of, again, if I have to go into the potential use cases which have already been adopted and some which are yet to be adopted, we see that it could be used for micropayments. It could be used in the context of customer loyalty, employee benefits. One good example is, if you look at some of the fuel cards which are issued in India, whether it is issued by Sodexo or whether it is issued by Edenred. Of course, Edenred is not operational anymore in the country. And if what you get as a food reimbursement, 2,200 per month, or as a fuel reimbursement on the card, there are some merchants where you can go and fuel reimbursement, you can swipe the card and you can buy toiletries also, or you can buy cosmetics. But there are some retailers who will not let you do it. They will basically tell you saying that, sir, sorry, this card cannot be used for this purpose. So you're going to control that based on the merchant ID and the POS level, the point of sale terminal level. It requires a lot of manual intervention. On the other hand, you just introduce CBDC with the programmability and say that this money can be used only at the fuel pumps. It will be used only at the fuel pump. So basically, the amount of due diligence or the diligence that needs to be done at a merchant end gets eliminated. That's where we see CBDC being used primarily for employee benefits with the programmability aspect, and subsidies I've already spoken to you about, and what are the various things that regulator as well as the central bank is looking into. Let me go to the next slide. Yeah, move forward, please. Next one, this is not working. Yeah, so, intent is to just to give you a perspective of what the firm has done both in India as well as globally. For UK finance, we looked at how do you do CBDC from a regulatory liability network. We worked with some of the European-based banks to look at CBDC for their own requirements as well as for the requirements on the SWIFT network. We also looked at requirement of a keyless infrastructure for CBDC wallet. We worked with MasterCard, where we helped MasterCard to look at a multi-token implementation, again using CBDC architectures. So there are many things that can happen in this space, whether it is from a wallet side, whether it is from, one is in terms of issuance side and the second one is from an acceptance side. In between the issuance and acceptance is the customer who will need custodial services and storage of those CBDCs. And we worked across the value chain, right from issuance to acceptance. Okay. This is primarily from a perspective of, it's not just about the CBDC wallet per se, right? There's a third of practice that needs to evolve when it comes to CBDC usage. There are elements of cybersecurity aspects. How do you safeguard the CBDC wallets and, conformance to the regulatory aspects? And also there are a lot of things on the technology side. Interestingly, most of these implementations have been done using Hyperledger Fabric family of protocols. And we've seen that Hyperledger family is very, very efficient when it comes to implementation of these protocols. As he mentioned, it's not only just the protocol, there's also a fair amount of interaction on the Web3 side. That's where the Firefly plays an important role. So we've done a combination of the Hyperledger protocol in association with Firefly to implement this. So that was just a short, capsule on CBDC and how we see the space evolving. Currently, only few banks are operating in this particular space, but we expect that the regulations will come around like in a way, it was mandated that every bank needs to extend a UPI-related service to the customers. In a similar fashion, we see that over a period of time, there could be either a good guideline or a mandate coming from the central bank saying that all the banks should up their game as well as participation in the CBDC network. Any questions? Happy to answer those questions. Yes, please. Oh, okay. So recently, the governor did a speech at Bangalore. Last week, there was a session that has happened. There, they were saying that they will push two things. One is CBDC and another one is Unified Lending Interface, which will happen on the DPI, Digital Public Infrastructure Stack that the country had built. There is no specific guideline per se, but we see a lot of interest coming in from the banks now. I would tend to think maybe another couple of months there should be a guideline. They've done the pilots. Pilots have been happening for the last nine months to 1 year now. Where SDFC, ICICI, and the others have participated in those pilots. But I think maybe in 2 months' time frame it should come. It's all linked to the within the country usage as well as the outside the country usage. Maybe the folks here from MPCI, if they have some insights they can share in terms of what are the timelines for the CBDC implementation. Do you know by... No, he's saying when will it be mandated for banks, if at all? Correct. That's a RBI decision. In fact, they're so tight-lipped about the architecture. I tried to get some insights about the architecture and the others. It's not very easy to obtain those details from both NPCI as well as RBI. They are very, very, tight-lipped about that. Yeah, please. Right. Correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. See, if banks were keen to onboard those 200 million people, there wouldn't be anybody without a bank account in the country today, right? There are certain segment, even for banks, even with their mandate of universal service obligations, as they are called, they cannot deny a banking facility to anyone. And even then, they find that particular segment not very commercially lucrative. There's a cost to maintain those accounts, which is low-value accounts, or people just use account as a method of getting the money and then spend it. So it just becomes a channel to receive the money rather than holding the money. That particular segment, you cannot push the banks to do it. So what my perspective is, for a lucrative segment, it will go through the wholesale route, where it will go through a network of banks. Banks become the intermediaries to distribute CBDC. For non-lucrative segment, the retail thing can come. And also, to be honest, CBDC is also occupying a very important role in the narrative of the politicians today, right? Because you promised few things to the citizens, and you have to fulfill on those promises. Yes, please. Right. Right. Okay, so there's a very good example of such mass scale implementation from the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, where I personally was involved in shaping that protocol to protect people from spam calls and spam text. There, the Department of Telecommunication has not invested in any infrastructure. They put the owner's bank on the large telcos to maintain the infrastructure. So Airtel, Vodafone Idea, Reliance Jio, they were responsible for building the infrastructure and enable availability of those services. So my hunch is they will go down the same path. Either they'll ask intermediary like payments network like NPCI to maintain. Today they're maintaining the UPI stack, and banks are just utilizing that UPI stack. So it may go down that particular path. Right. Yes, please. Yeah, in terms of, so it's a form, you can consider it as a form of payment. Actually, there was a pilot where Indians visiting the Eiffel Tower were able to pay for services over there using CBDC. That pilot has been completed about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So it kind of, what it does is, one, it pushes the frontier of acceptance of the rupee. And as you know, those dollars are valuable today because it's globally accepted, right? So when you push the frontier of acceptance of rupee in different markets, the rupee value is, the intrinsic value of rupee is going to go up, number one. And number two, it's a ease of convenience for the travelers. Today, I have to give Indian rupees, convert it into euros, carry those euros, pay the conversion difference, pay the markup fees to the money handler and all that stuff, right? So all that stuff is going to go away, which is only good for both the end user as well as the country, because the rupee will become stronger. And number one, the users will not be inconvenienced. Any more questions? Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry, please. When you come front, I can't hear you. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the guidelines will come in such a way. Right. Okay. Yeah, in terms of, there are many such enablers. How many of you have used USSD for UPI? Can anybody raise your hand? There are only 2 people who have used USSD for, you know that USSD is available on a feature phone as well, right? We do not know because we don't need, we have smartphones, we have internet, everything. But people who do not have those, they know how to use those kind of infrastructure. So infrastructure of that nature will evolve over a period of time to handle that particular segment. Yeah, there's something called offline CBDC. They've also done, e-rupee also, where they use the vouchers and stuff like that. Again, the voucher will have the cost of printing, right? Instead of printing vouchers, you can as well print the money and push that money into the market. So some of these things, sorry, do I have answers for everything? I don't have answers for everything. I'm just saying based on the need, these are the areas where it can play an important role. Good thing is there is a need, there is a technology available to support it, and there is a solution also which is there. And thanks to the guys at the Hyperledger Foundation, they have enabled the implementation of CBDC. I think MPCI is also leveraging Hyperledger fabric stack, right? Sorry if it's out of syllabus question, I'll take the question back and it'll not get recorded. But my understanding is they're using Hyperledger Fabric to enable that. So there is a need, there is a solution. All that is that it has to be stitched together. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. So I think that was indeed an interesting topic, and we all had some very good questions. So before we move on to the next couple of talks, we have two more to go. I think we can break for a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back here. So please help yourselves to the snacks present outside, and then we'll see you back in 10. Thank you. We'll start in another minute, guys. So please settle down. Okay, so I hope we are all feeling really refreshed after that break. So next up, we have another interesting topic. We are here to talk about how NPCI essentially is using open source technologies. NPCI, we're very aggressive with how extensively we use open source technology. And so we have our head of blockchain, Mr. Rishikesh Nashikar, who will be talking to us about how NPCI is using open source technology and how we are uh, bringing business value through the open source and also the Hyperledger technology. So over to you, Rishikesh. Can we please have a round of applause, guys?
Thanks, Ankita. Hello, everyone. Had a good break? Yeah, it was really required, right? Okay, so I think this title will change after 17th of September, I think, right? 16th of September, right? This should become a decentralized trust. And happy to announce that we will be also called founding member, I think. Yeah, we are currently associate member of Hyperledger, and I think we'll get converted into a founding member of Hyperledger, of the decentralized trust. Great. Right, so I think I'll not take a lot of time. I think you all probably are very familiar with this sort of a story, right? One of the couple of key points, right? So you can see the lot of innovation and product releases that have happened over the last decade. And this is sort of a story that we are seeing in India, right? And all of you are using digital payments now. Any payments that you see today, be it the salary being credited, be it buying grocery, if you are making your real estate payments, DBTs, the government schemes, everything is digital payment, and that's handled by NPCI, right? So if you see 2016 is where we launched UPI, right, just before the pandemic, and we hit 1 billion per month on 2019, right? So that's the adoption we are seeing. And from that onwards, next 5 years, we are clocking almost 15 billion, right? So that's a massive amount of growth that we are seeing in payment industry. And we see not only the vanilla payments or just a P2P or P2P payments, but there is a whole innovation that is happening on the stack. So you will see a lot of these different features and some of the new products that are being built, right? For example, the cross-border or the credit on UPI. It's very novel innovation that has happened. I don't know if some of you must have heard that there is a new delegate payment feature that is being rolled out on UPI, right? Very interesting feature. Whether your kids or your family members don't need to have an account number. They can use your own account and transact with the same account, right? So very interesting use cases that are happening. And just to sort of give you a quick scale comparison, so typically any top search engine does 100K requests per second, right? And we do almost 150K. So we are at par with one of the top tech infrastructure teams or organizations that are out there, right? We do probably half, 50% of our digital payments in India now across the world compared to the world, right? And we are hitting, I think, 15 billion this month. So we are continue to grow. We are seeing, uh, thank you. So we are seeing we'll certainly, I think, reach to 1 billion per day. We're sort of ready for it, and we are looking forward to the next target that we set for ourselves. And this is all happened with open source, right? So this is very important thing, right? So since we have built UPI, we have been consumers of the all open source tech stacks. What all you can see here is all open source. We don't depend on any specific license model, right? And this is the tech stack that we have been using, and we are building for billions. And Hyperledger Fabric is obviously one of them. Obviously, we cannot talk about the products, but technology we can certainly talk about. So this is typically this is a journey that we have seen. So till 2015, we were very much legacy technology vendors dependent, right? Product approach, and then we sort of transform ourselves into open source, consuming a lot of open source technologies, and this is where the UPI and all the new products emerge. So now our focus has been open source creation, thinking digital public infrastructure platform approach, right? And now the next journey is around, how do we then give it back to the community, right? This is where we want to act like a contributor. And this event is probably one first step around it as well, right? So currently we have been working on a lot of blockchain initiatives, AI, ML, data science initiatives, building products. Some of these are sort of work in progress. Maybe in the next meeting I'll be able to talk in detail. But that has been our journey, and our focus now has been on the last part where we want to be deep tech, we want to be contributor and giving back to the society, right? And this is all happened with OSS, right? Totally complete open source and components that are built in-house within NPCI are able to do some of these things without any third-party help. So yeah, what we are doing at NPCI. So this is all not possible without like a great engineering team in-house, right? We can't depend on someone else. We have to build our own talent. We have to build our own skill set, capabilities, and ability to engineer some of those large-scale production systems. So this has been some of the core areas that we have been focusing on over the last 3 to 5 years. And this is our workforce now. So we are primarily focusing on architects, data scientists, IT operations, be it on AI side or the blockchain side, full stack developers, and obviously the concept owners who are coming up with different ideas, owning them, and taking it to the execution. So this has been a story of India, if you really see, and NPCI is probably part of it, right? Our whole approach towards the technology and infrastructure has changed, right? So we think that whenever we are thinking about large scale population scale system, which benefits the billion plus population, we are thinking from a public aspect. How do we build systems which are highly scalable, right? Not only from a private interest, but also primarily from a public interest standpoint. Then we want to be we want to be cutting edge. We want to be using the latest and latest technologies that are out there, right? And build architecture that scales billions a day, right? Not only for payments, but all other applications that we will build in the future, right? And at the same time, we have to be parallel fast, asset light, some of these things. And then essentially we want to build ecosystem around it, right? Once we have a tech and products ready, then we build ecosystem around it where entrepreneurs can come and innovate on top of it. And that has been always a factor in designing some of the systems which are open and which facilitates a framework or specifications that startups or entrepreneurs can build on top of it. So So this has been our journey. We want to become a consumer contributor, and I'm sure you heard about Falcon. So Falcon is our first open source project, uh, which was I think done in October sometime, right? So it's a basically a tool that helps streamlining the deployment of Hyperledger Fabric. It has been a challenge for many of the organizations that we have been working with. So Falcon is the way that makes their life easy. But we are not stopping here. Obviously, we went through its own journey, incubation, intersource, and no source and open source. So this is what we have been always busy, and there are multiple projects that are lined up in incubation step internally within our organization. But we want to now take a step and move towards actual open sourcing part of it. Right. So this is Falcon is probably the first step, but then these are some of the areas that we want to open source. We have been extensively working on distributed system scalability. We have a pretty large team who's doing some exciting R&D, as well as testing out a lot of hypotheses that we have been working on. And then there is a lot of focus on privacy preserving. So when it comes to distributed system or blockchain, this is one of the primary aspect for all the enterprises and all the individuals. Whatever we want to do is within the realms of all the enterprise privacy. Interoperability is another important initiatives that we have been working on. We keep saying different ledgers, different technologies coming up. Unless until they are interoperable, you will not reap the benefits of it from an end consumer standpoint. You would need a unified view, you need universal access, and you need composability on across different ecosystems that you would work with. So interoperability is another aspect, and then the distributed KV storage is another one that has been work in progress. But yeah, all of these things, good things, will we would want to open source at some point of time, and the journey starts. So that's it from myself. Happy to take questions. Yeah, Siddharth. Both are the challenge. Oh, by the way, CBDC is not our child, it's RBI's child. We don't own it, we are implementers. But yeah, I think both have their own purpose. I mean, if you see, we have 16 payment systems today, right? Everyone has a purpose, right? You don't, for real estate payment, you don't use UPI. For all the salaries, we don't use UPI, right? Every system is built for a purpose, right? And that's how it will be. CBDC, like Ravish alluded, it's built for a specific purpose. We are not solving UPI's problem in CBDC or vice versa. So they are not competing, but they are alternatives for a user. And I'm sure CBDC will also flourish because it's a very, very initial stage or a very, very initial time where people have to kind of understand what is CBDC, right? The adoption will come when the use cases will arrive, and how do we see the other assets being tokenized. You can obviously ask me in the office, but you can ask in open forum as well. Thank you. Namaskar,
Okay, so thank you, Rishikesh, for letting us know how NPCI is contributing in the open source uh, world. And moving forward, we have our last panel for the day. Essentially, this is talking about how blockchain will be having an important role to play in the DPI. So DPI basically stands for Digital Payment Infrastructure, and it is a set of systems that houses projects like the Aadhaar and the UPI, ONDC, etc. So can we please have on stage Julian, Mr. Rajesh, Mr. Siddharth, and Mr. Kamlesh, and they will be basically talking about role of blockchain in DPI. Julian, can you please? Julian will be a moderator at the end. So, thank you.
Thank you. How long do we have? Hmm? Okay, so this is a great topic. So we're looking at the role of blockchain in building the digital public infrastructure. So you guys are not prepped, right? So what I thought I'd do is I would talk a little bit about what you think blockchain's role is in digital infrastructure, then talk about where we want to go and then how we get there. Does that make sense? So maybe we'll start with you, Siddharth. Do you want to talk a little bit about what is the role? A little bit more on that.
So we take it for granted. So typically, when you talk about public digital infrastructure, some of the key building blocks, something that we inherited, something as simple as Aadhaar or digital identity, is one of the fundamental, let's say, pillars of public digital infrastructure. If you look at what are the different stacks, so I would say it is starting off with digital identity, then looking at in terms of how do you connect all transactions with respect to revenue, that's tax identification number. So typically to call somebody an advanced economy, what I would suggest is how many times do you actually go to your bank for updating your KYC, or how long does it take a company to register? So without taking names, for a country in the Caribbean, which is supposed to be a tax haven, it takes at least 4 days for you to update your KYC with 2 visits. It takes about a month and a half for you to register a foreign firm. People do it because it's a tax haven. Now, typically, all of these we take it for granted. In India right now, you can actually do your KYC in 30 seconds flat. Right? So in terms of building a digital economy, I think public digital infrastructure plays a key role. The way that we did Aadhaar was fundamentally a bit different. So with now the advent of SSI, self-sovereign identity, and others expanding that, you'll see a sea change, let's say, possibilities it offers for fintechs, for firms, etc., to work on. Just to, let's say, calibrate this and to just to support my proposition that digital identity started off as one of the first documents of public digital infrastructure, EUID. The European Union has digitized, it's looked at blockchain with use cases, but it's now realized that there's no single identity for anybody in Europe. So the EUID project, which is now bringing in, again, Hyperledger is playing a key role in that, that's going to be a critical. And each and every citizen in the European Union will have a wallet, a citizen wallet, where you can store your digital credentials. Probably it may turn out to be a multi-currency CBDC wallet in future. A lot of banks are exploring that. So they've learned from the Asian peers about super apps. So you'll see a lot of things happening soon in Europe on PDI, on digital public infrastructure. But I think the global south, everybody talks about it, but that's where the real differentiation will happen with DPI. And blockchain is one of the fundamental pillars for that, along with AI, ML, and others. I think it's a very question.
He's always trying to silence. So yes, yeah. So yeah, we have that in terms of those great opportunities, self-sovereign identity, etc. Right? So yeah, so okay,
Yeah.
add to that, Rajesh.
Yeah. So from my perspective, there are some building blocks which are already available, and there are many building blocks that are not available. So if you look at the DPI infrastructure in the country. As I said before, it is built on Jandan, Aadhaar, and Mobile. And
Yeah.
today in this country, Aadhaar is so prevalent that even to burn a dead body, you need to furnish Aadhaar, right? So it is that kind of prevalent from a usage perspective, but it does not have elements like redactable credentials. So it's like you give once and you don't even know what happens to the trail of that credential. Today, there are banks taking the Aadhaar document, house owners taking the Aadhaar document, the sales agents taking Aadhaar documents, and we don't even know. It's a completely a blind spot when it comes to the further utilization of those identity documents, whether downstream or upstream. So the first thing that needs to be done is one, the verifiable credential on the DPI stack, and also the ability to redact your credential after the utilization has been completed. That's a very, very big opportunity for improvement, number one. Number two, there's always this yin and yang of transparency and privacy. So how do you manage? You want to enable transparency, but you also want to retain privacy. So it's like, they're conflicted, right? The objectives are conflicted with each other. That's where the zero knowledge proofs can play a major role, or in terms of the self-sovereign identity, verifiable credentials can play a major role. As I said earlier, furnishing of a document does not mean authentication of an existence of that particular individual. Today, in the country, it is deemed to be interpreted that once you give the identity document, it is interpreted that individual is existing. And that's a big area to address. It's not necessary that the individual is going to address, right? It's existing or not. That's what I say as the proof of presence, which we have recommended to even to Mighty, not here, but not now, at least in my previous organization, we have recommended that those aspects. And then obviously from in terms of transparency in the government to citizen services, today on the stack which is there, today you have certifications, and certifications become a means to get a lot of funding from the government and incentives from the government. And in spite of that, the state governments are battling a lot of fraud in that particular area. Today you have DigiCert, you have, what do you call, DigiLocket wallet, where you can store all your credentials. All those aspects are wonderful. But what is there is in terms of how do you ensure the authenticity, the truthfulness of those particular documents, it is still, a lacuna or a big area to address. That's where the technology, the newer technology is going to play an important role from a blockchain perspective.
So transparency and privacy, right? And
Yeah,
that
absolutely. Transparency and privacy. Today, you've given your document, the entire world will come to know of your document, right? You don't even know, for example, you apply for a simple thing like a bank account, the bank salesperson will come and says, nothing will happen if you don't furnish your identity document. I furnish my identity document, and very cleverly, I've seen this practice by some elders in my family. They sign across it saying that this is only for this purpose. Big deal. You convert that into a electronic document and use a magic eraser. Today, Google Photos give you that magic eraser, right? You convert that into an electronic document and then use a magic eraser, take off your signature. That becomes a reusable document for anybody. So because of that, there are identity frauds in the country, misutilization of identity. All of this stuff is happening on the wonderful stack that has been built. But there is a lot more to accomplish. That's where I think the blockchain technology will play a role.
With DPDP coming in, consent management is something which will come through. So zero knowledge proof and citizens owning their information. That is something which all of us taken for granted. How many of you have actually given out information for prizes in any mall, right? So in general, we are super lackadaisical towards our privacy compared to a lot more people in Europe and others. So I think that general awareness in terms of privacy, consent management, all of that is something which we'll see coming in the Indian stack. That's a learning for us. But I think for people who are actually starting off from an early stage where they don't have anything. I think many of these technologies will let them to leap across into the digital age.
Yeah, just to add to what you said is we don't have to rebuild it from the scratch. We have already seen that in the implementation with spam calls in this country, right? The product that my team built at Tech Mahindra, where there is verifiable consent and a reversible preference. That is more important, which is what needs to be established for the other identity documents. Today in the telecom scenario, I give my consent to a marketeer doesn't mean that the consent will stay forever. I can technically go back and redact that particular consent. The same concept is not applicable to identity documents in India. I give a document to the loan company, it stays with the loan company forever. Why should it stay with the loan company forever? So some of those things can be addressed.
Amazing. And Kamesh, do you have anything else to add?
I think in my perspective, I think already Siddharth and Rohit covered a lot. But if you see the technology perspective, the definition of DPI is maybe resiliency, security, privacy, and build for the efficient governance, right? And now, if you see the blockchain definition, it's similarly the same concept like transparency or maybe security, privacy. So, while you're building any DPI, I think a blockchain can play a very important role, whether it's a transparency perspective, whether it's a security perspective, or building the resilient infrastructure, distribution or distributed network, or maybe the automation. And we already seen success stories in India. UPI is one, Aadhaar is a global story, and now like so DigiYatra, for example, everyone uses. And I think there are a lot, even like CBDCs will be another DPI infrastructure, not for India, but globally. Different countries will be having their own CBDC infrastructure, and the similar country will follow the UPI and follow the document management, certificate, and consent management is another very critical. And all is a blockchain very important way defining and building the right DPI infrastructures.
I like one point which he made with respect to programmable money, right? So typically, so how many of you speak Telugu here? Okay. So typically where we can probably use it is Manda Apadan Kosam. So you'll not be able to use it in a Daruki Thalli or Theka. So what I mean is typically there are a lot of these local body shops in rural India, liquor shops, so wherein actually a lot of the free money or direct benefits transfer to that, right? So that's one simple example which can actually make a lot of difference in the lives of the rural folk. For example, in Singapore, this is something which was tried out, wherein if you wanted to buy alcohol with the direct benefits transfer coming in from MAS into your account, you cannot buy alcohol in your supermarket. So same thing is something which can be enabled here with programmable money, just to see how it can actually impact the social causes as well.
No, definitely, and obviously, if you're giving money out to people, for corn oil, or yes, it pursues its purpose, and there's no one between you and the ultimate contributor to it, right? So there are some great benefits, right? So that's the kind of nirvana. So I don't know where you want to answer this, but where would you say that, let's say 10 being that are working, where are we now between that and 10?
I'll probably say we are blessed in a country like India. We are at about maybe 5.5 or a 6. If I look at, let's say, a lot of countries in Africa, or for that matter, even in Asian countries are way ahead in terms of public digital infrastructure. Europe is still catching up.
Yeah.
I would say Latin America is also doing well. Obviously, North America is still in the dark ages. They're still catching up. But typically, I think there's a lot more to be done. We're at about 5.5.
Okay. Rajesh,
yeah, I also tend to think that while the journey is good, we are not there yet. Probably in the same range, about 6 or 6.5. And what happens is, the new use cases will also come into the country. One thing which the citizens will demand from the government today, as a taxpayer, I get nothing. And tomorrow, if I want to get into a scenario where I get differential services from the government based on the magnitude of the taxes I pay, and then that I need to be identified in an anonymous fashion so that I can demand those services from a government to citizen perspective. That's where we see a very good applicability of, Web3 or blockchain technology, which I personally believe with that activism coming into the country, you will get ushered into a world like that, where the new age technology will enable that. It will democratize access to those services.
Excellent. What number?
So I think if I separate this ranking for the different things, so like the digital payments, we already at 10, but other than payments, we still at the 4 or 5.
4 or 5. And by the way, you're more optimistic than I was. So if we want to get to 10, so that my question is, and I think India, with the amazing, public infrastructure, which was meant to take 50 years and took 5 years, right, in terms of Aadhaar, UPI, and now world leading. And I think this is a place that can help the world. So if stuff happens in India, I think, with through communities like us, we can help. So what do we need to do to get to 10? And how can we here, this Hyperledger community here, help do that?
So in terms of, even if you see payments, the pinnacle in payments has been reached because government took a very strong position. And if you see today on the NPCI stack, the merchants don't make any money. It's only the users who are making a lot of money on that. Unlike a MasterCard or a Visa kind of a payments network, because government has architected it in such a way so that you kind of make access to the services easy, right? Which means the regulator has taken a very firm view and also enabled not only advocacy of those services, but also enabled access to those services. And that can happen only through regulators. For example, you look at ACRA in Singapore for custodial services, which is equivalent to the custodial services here, Security Exchange Board of India. And ACRA mandated that whatever certificates that they are giving, whether it is shareholding in a company, all had to go through a blockchain enabled so that, when the person downloads that particular certificate, you cannot misrepresent the certificate. So they were tracking the JSON file pertaining to that certificate on a blockchain network. And if somebody has misrepresented that particular certificate, one had an opportunity to go and cross-verify that. So those kind of mechanisms, if they have to come into the country, one, it needs to have a regulatory support. And like in payments, tectonic changes happened with demonetization, supporting open source technology from an NPCI perspective. So it will not happen if it is just left to the market forces. It has to be facilitated by an active role of the regulator. And that's where, if they continue to play this role in other areas than payments, it will come up the curve.
Definitely, I think you need a catalyst, right?
I probably wanted to add one more point. In terms of open source, right? The power of open source in terms of building, it's not actually being limited to a certain set of people. You're getting ideas from across the world. I think that's the power of open source. The community is coming together. You're creating something for good, and it's also open for innovations. There are so many startups which have evolved around, be it around payments infrastructure that we have built, or there are so many other use cases. The sheer number of startups which are actually using Hyperledger, and they've created so many innovative products. I think that's the power of open source. I'm a strong believer in open source. So I think that's one way that we are actually contributing back to the society as well. And I think that's amazing. That's where I see Hyperledger, the number of use cases and the young crowd that is here, the more we get brighter ideas and contributions. I think that's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. As we said, all of us are smarter than any one of us. So the more contributing, the better.
I have a few points like they're not appreciating the UPI NPCI more, but like how the UPI is scaled and grow in last couple of years, like the similar different DPIs in different sector, like ULI, right? Unified lending interface. It is grow similar like how the UPI grows in the last 10 years, or let's say Yatra, or let's say governance system like ONDC, for example. All the sector need to have a DPI, like how the UPI is built and UPI growth. Then maybe we can reach somewhere maybe 7 to 8 in coming 10 to 20. I think 20 to 30 years, not 10 years. But I think similar focus and similar motivation, awareness, the commitment need to reflect on all the different sectors where something new is an initiative like Yatra, ONDC, ULI, and other initiatives.
Yeah, we have so many great case studies, like the telco one, which it's been going since 2018, purring in the background. So there are so many great cases that we can talk about. So, are there any questions? Any questions? So I know we're past the 7 o'clock, right? So we world that is amazing. So I'm going to ask maybe just one last question, right? A call to action. What do you say to the people here? How should they get involved? How can they help, pull this? In terms of technology, the faster we accelerate the development of technology, the faster we will get benefit from society and therefore say, what do you say? How should people
contribute more? I think that all of you got some fantastic ideas. No idea is too small or too big. Even if you were to contribute a little bit to any of these projects that you're all part of, you've been taking, let's say, benefit of what the team has built. I think it will be amazing. We look forward to your contributions.
I don't think, the community has done that bad. In fact, I'm very happy of the significant strides the community made. If I present a metric when I started the blockchain practice way back in 2018 at Tech Mahindra, and when I look at the number of Web3 globally, in India, we had less than 5% of the global workforce. Or maybe less than 2% in 2018. That number today has gone up as high as 30 to 40%. So, that's primarily because of involvement of community, involvement of students, involvement of startup founders, and also access to the technology. You guys have taken a good stance that you're not going to license it, and anybody can gain access to that with enhancement of tools like Git, Copilots, and various other things. A lot of people have got into this particular area, but what has happened is a significant of them still confine themselves to employee kind of an engagement, not a startup founder kind of an engagement. And that's where, if we are able to pivot and if we create some mechanisms over there, it will be good. And another good thing is, I've been involved in the startup ecosystem way back from 2010. And in 2010, I can easily differentiate. I could have easily differentiated a startup in Bay Area versus a startup in India. Many ideas were me too, Hyperledger search. Many people wanted to do a laundromat, Hyperledger search, laundromat, and all that stuff. Today, ask me, I won't be able to differentiate between a startup in India and Bay Area. So the maturity level has increased significantly, but still more and more people need to come into the startup world rather than into the employment world. And that's where it can contribute significantly.
Great. And finally,
I also agree with, I think, Rajesh about the startup ecosystem, because whether you're working in MNC, working in any government organization, but you could be founder within yourself. Whatever doing in your organization, you could be the founder, maybe innovator, contributor. And then I believe like more organization, more people, then why not just working with one company and one project and one skill itself? Be open, be innovator, and be contributor.
so you're the co-lead of the Indian chapter, right? So how do people, if you're a developer there and you want to go in contribution, who should they talk to? And when's your weekly call?
Yeah. So at Hyperledger India, you can join us on every Thursday, 3 p.m. weekly call. And there are a number of initiatives we are planning, and more people who can join us and work with us to maybe to reach more people and maybe take the new initiative, because when this right trust will be announced, maybe we need more people out there to maybe diverse the different projects beyond Hyperledger.
Absolutely. And thank you all, Siddharth, Rajesh, Kamlesh, for your expertise, your leadership. And I may say that India is a great, as you say, the thing about open source, if you're successful in Copenhagen, the world is successful. If you're successful in Beijing, everyone's successful. But the more you could, India is such a leader, you have an opportunity to help the whole planet in terms of move forward, not just for India, right?
And probably I wanted to thank you and Daniela as well. You've been actually crisscrossing the country, doing so much for Hyperledger as well. Hart as well. Hart for his contribution, I think. Even with Bhattarai and others. So I think thank you, and looking forward to working with you and further growing that as well. Thank you. Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Okay, I think some of us are very eager to leave. So thank you all for joining. And a big thank you to all of our speakers for being here today with us and for sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you.